in a lot of ways, YouTube conditions the audience to expect people to make extreme and provocative statements that they can't really back up with any kind of substance or depth of real life experience, research, information, etc., etc. To some extent, people reacted to my critique of Earthling Ed and of what's been going on lately in terms of vegan street activism and the phenomenon that I like to call celebrity culture devouring real activism or real politics, whatever politics is supposed to be when you think about the present and future of veganism. A lot of people reacted to that as if I was just making a kind of outrageous one-liner, as if I were really someone like a stand-up comedian, tossing an insult in Earthling Ed's direction, and that I had nothing to back it up with. And anyone who talked to me, whatever medium, back and forth, one of the first things I had to say was, no, I've really been engaged in this type of critique in great depth and with good intentions and real sincerity for years, including the earlier video I did in real depth discussing the political philosophy of Earthling Ed. And that earlier video is a critique, but in some ways, very fundamentally, it's flattering to Earthling Ed. And I think it drew people's attention to the fact that Earthling Ed has a political philosophy, which I think even most of his supporters are not aware of. As it happens, I expressed my opinion that this political philosophy is wrong, but I did so in that earlier video in a really appreciative manner, that I appreciate this is someone who's devoting his time to getting out in the street and trying to promote veganism as best he can. And I think most people engaged in the critique of Earthling Ed do start with that generally appreciative tone, even though all of us at some point or another must hit our limits. But let's come back to the basic principle thing here. One, if I were just doing what a stand-up comedian did and kind of making if I was making a merely satirical set of remarks for Earthling Ed, I think that still really would be valuable. I think that's something veganism in general needs, and it's something that the people who are at the extreme edge of verging into being cult leaders like Earthling Ed, I think it's something they really need. I think it's a wake-up call. They need to have a laugh at themselves, have a step back, and be willing to look at what they're saying in a lecture like that I was to some extent criticizing, to some extent, ridiculing. And say, you know what? Maybe this is a bit laughable. Maybe we have to take on a little bit of a different direction and tone. And guys, if you're watching this video and you've already hit the thumbs down, if you're a sincere supporter of Earthling Ed, you should really ask yourself, why can't he do that? Why can't he step back and have a laugh at himself? And on this channel, again and again, I really do have a laugh at myself. Part of the original description of what this channel does on Patreon, it used to be here on YouTube also, it still states self-parody as part of the mandate of what we do. So, there's a lot of sincere examination and inquiry and analysis that goes on this channel, but I'm delighted whenever I discover another YouTube channel that's really criticized me. And you will have seen this again and again if you've been watching the channel for a while. I often directly re-upload people's criticisms of me. And often I don't even answer them. I don't even disagree with them in the video. So the three most recent examples I can think of offhand, a lot of you will remember this video. It's really quite funny. A guy named Rob, an Australian guy with a thick Australian accent, made a really vitriolic, angry video criticizing me. And I just took his video. I slightly edited it. I made it slightly more concise, because at one point he just started talking about his own work history. He started talking about his own life. He kind of had a digression. So I edited that part up, but I wasn't censoring it to flatter myself. It was all the hardest hitting criticism that he directed towards me, and I re-uploaded it to my own channel. And, for the most part in that case, people just had a laugh at it. Another guy who's a bit more of a new age diet guru criticized me again very harshly. And in that case, I re-uploaded his entire criticism to my channel, the entire criticism he directed at me, and I didn't verbally respond to or rebut anything he said. But he did, in his criticism, to me it was hilarious, he insulted the physical condition I'm in. So I put in a brief clip of me doing push-ups and some pictures of me with my shirt off, flexing my muscle, just answering that. And then otherwise, I just let his criticism, proceed. So this is my point here. It's not just that I enjoy having a laugh at myself. I do engage in self-parody and self-mockery. I'm actively seeking out and engaging in meaningful critique, meaningful criticism when it's directed my way. I don't just offer it towards others. And never in my life, on YouTube or in academia or in writing formal articles or presenting papers at conferences, and or whether that was a more academic setting or more of a real world conference paper setting, like you're presenting a paper to donors from the European Union and other government and semi-government officials about what's going on in humanitarian work in Cambodia. I've been in non-academic situations, and I've presented a paper to a bunch of people who were like architects working on a project, more of a corporate setting. I've never in my life once had someone offer a sincere and in-depth criticism of my work in the way that I offered in that earlier video, a critique of the political philosophy of Earthling Ed. So there are two questions there that you can ask about Earthling Ed. One is, why can't he step back and take a bit of a laugh at himself if someone were to respond to what he did satirically? And there was a lot of support for my more recent video, which opened with a little satirical montage, then had some meaningful reflections. I mean, the whole video wasn't mockery by any stretch of the imagination. But there's another question there. Why did he never respond to that earlier, longer, in-depth critique, really talking about his political philosophy? That was offered to use my mother's phrase. My mother likes to use this phrase from the 1960s. That was an argument in good faith. I was engaging with his philosophy and his perspective. What he's doing as a leader in the vegan movement, I was really doing that in good faith. And, you tell me, why couldn't he also respond in good faith? At the time I made that video, he was not yet a celebrity within veganism. He was not yet rich, and he was not yet famous. And of those three statements, rich, famous, and celebrity, the two that are debatable are famous and celebrity. Is he really famous? He's micro-famous. Is he really a celebrity? Within a certain subculture, he's a celebrity. But rich is not debatable. I mean, we really know that he has become wealthy by performing this peculiar script again and again, having what are frankly counterproductive, hostile conversations with strangers in the street. You can go to his YouTube channel and you can see, again, obviously he has the best of intentions, but this is, it's acting out the same familiar script again and again for an appreciative audience. But the real function being played by this interaction for Earthling Ed himself, for the audience, in terms of effective activism, it's worth questioning. And sure, on this channel, we're going to question it. Maybe sometimes with a little bit of satire, maybe sometimes in a more sincere and sober way, as I did in that earlier video. I'm pretty sure it has critique in the title. But look, let's talk a little bit about YouTube and frames this whole thing briefly. I said before, YouTube seems to train the audience to have this expectation that people are just going to make catty and extreme remarks, provocative remarks, and then have nothing to back it up with. And I saw that happen in the comment section following after my recent video in which, I was talking about communism. I was talking about communism negatively. And if you check my Instagram, by the way, I have a hilarious picture of myself attending an anti-communist, pro-democracy demonstration just a couple of days ago. I didn't even know it was happening. It was complete luck. I showed up in the right place at the right time, and I got to participate in that demonstration. In its way, quite moving and quite meaningful to meet and talk to those people. More people should care about democracy. More people should care about the terrible history communism has had and the terrible threat it is, for the future of, the whole world, frankly. but of course especially Asia, Southeast Asia, East Asia, etc. Anyway, communism is still out there, and those are debates still worth having. I made this video a couple days ago talking about communism. Of course, there were positive comments. A lot of people appreciated and supported that video. But in the negative comments, the majority sentiment, the majority conviction, the majority assumption of the people writing in negatively, they either opened or ended the comment by saying that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm just making these remarks about communism without having done any reading or any research. Now, I don't know what kind of people, you guys mix with, but it's really likely that you will never in your life meet someone who knows more about communism than I do. The number of years I've put into studying the history of communism all over the world, both the subject matter being all over the world and my actually living in communist countries. At this point, I have expertise in Buddhist studies. It's very likely you'll never meet someone who's more of an expert in Buddhism than I am. If you do, I'm happy for you. That's great. There are dedicated scholars, but there are not a lot of them. And, if you just Google my name plus communism, I think you're going to find some of the essays I've written, various reflections of the life I lived and how much depth I really have on this topic. So there's a strange kind of parallel here where, you dare to criticize Earthling Ed, you dare to criticize what's going on in the vegan movement. The instinctual reaction is, and it's just created by this frame right here, it's just created by the format of the YouTube video. The instinctual reaction is, you don't know what you're talking about because you're on YouTube, because you're a glittering image on YouTube, without even searching within this YouTube channel to see how many videos I've made talking about communism, without searching within this YouTube channel to see how many videos I've made talking about Earthling Ed, or talking about what's going on in vegan activism, so on and so forth. Okay, now at this point, you're going to see I'm coming back to my main topic momentarily. But this little digression could almost be a separate video in itself. Is veganism growing or is it shrinking? In a very real sense, the true answer is both. There is a new Gallup poll out, 2018 Gallup poll. Gallup is a research company. They're famous for doing social science research and surveys. They did a very sloppy, very cheap telephone survey. They interviewed approximately 1,000 people through dialing random numbers. It's not a big survey. And in the year 2018, you tell me what type of person even answers the phone when they get a call from an unknown number. And when that unknown number explains that they're conducting a survey, what kind of person just hangs up the phone and what kind of person continues the call. So this is in many ways a deeply biased, deeply flawed survey. I remember I've written about these problems before in the past in political science, in research of various kinds. But with that deeply flawed and cheap methodology, ultimately this is cheap, low-quality research. Back in the year 2012, they discovered, using this methodology, that perhaps 2% of Americans were vegan. Okay? Now again, this is 2% of the type of person who will answer a random number they've never seen before on their phone. And when they're told this is a poll, you have a minute to answer a few questions, will stay on the line. 2% of those people, and who speak English fluently, said they were vegan. And then when they did the poll again in 2018, they instead found 3% of people were vegan in the United States of America. Okay, so that would indicate modest growth. There's also a sense in which we all know veganism is shrinking. Veganism is losing its tenacity. It's losing its verve. It's losing its edge. And this is obvious, most of all, for those of us who are right here inside this glowing box, YouTube. I remember discussing this with Charles Marlow years and years ago, back before his content turned to garbage. back when he was a friend of mine and a colleague in the movement, before he did drama videos at all, before he did all the terrible things that have now landed him in court, and, he's become a laughingstock. But I remember talking to Charles and saying to him very bluntly, he was asking me about the potential for this kind of vegan demi-monde to grow and grow, to have bigger and bigger audiences. And I said to him, look, lightning doesn't strike twice. Something really special happened. Something really unique in the history of the Western world happened when, for the first time, people came on YouTube and they saw slaughterhouse footage. And they were shocked and appalled and got motivated and Googled it and found out all this information. And each person has a different story, right? But whether you think of that as something that happened in 2012 or 2011, maybe for you personally it happened in 2008, by about 2016, that brief glow of excitement, the shock and horror and excitement that was caused by people watching Earthlings for the first time. Earthlings is a documentary film with a lot of slaughterhouse footage. From Farm to Fridge, it's another one here on YouTube. Whatever the particular YouTube video may be that you're thinking of, maybe one that's unnamed, neither famous nor other, but some vegan informational video or slaughterhouse footage video. This got played out. It wasn't new anymore, right? Something parallel has happened in cuisine, right? There was a time when just the idea of vegan bacon that was vegan, was shocking and original and edgy and cool. And if you said to a meat eater, or even if you said to a vegan or vegetarian, hey, guess what? There's this new product, vegan bacon. Oh, can you believe it? Do you want to try it? Whether you think that was 2008 or 2002 or 2011, I don't care. This is now 2018. It's not edgy. It's not shocking. It's not cool. It's not new. Vegan bacon has become part of the drumbeat of daily life. Nobody cares anymore. I mean, I'm old enough, I can remember when if someone said vegan yogurt to me, I thought they were making a joke. Like the concept of yogurt with no count, like, what, really? And vegan yogurt became part of my daily life. It became part of a lot of people's daily lives, right? What we've been doing here on this glowing rectangle, on this screen, it went through a peak of public interest. It was partly caused by that shock, partly caused by mainstream media sitting down and taking notice of veganism for the first time. There was the first time veganism was discussed on Oprah. So Oprah Winfrey is the name of the woman who makes the TV show. It's a famous TV show in the United States of America. If you're watching this in Japan or Germany, you might not know what I'm talking about. Oprah Winfrey covered veganism in a huge way for the first time. It was shocking, it was new, it was interesting to people. Okay, that doesn't happen twice. If today Oprah Winfrey talks about veganism, it doesn't have that impact. Okay, Bill Clinton became vegan, and a lot of people talked about it. Today, Al Gore is also vegan. Endless celebrities vegan. The first time you heard about a celebrity being vegan, the first time a mainstream news network had a vegan person on and did an interview, yes, there was shock. It was something new. It was something edgy. And then guess what, guys? The edge doesn't last long at all. It becomes boring. It becomes hackneyed. It becomes the butt of every joke. And at some point, it's even going to become, the subject of nostalgia, right? Oh, remember when veganism was exciting and novel and cool, right? That's not going to last. So on the internet, fads live and die fast and hard. In real life, on the street, there's no doubt there's a much slower process going on. Where, the first people to really do it, and this is partly because the technology of the laptop computer became cheaper, then later people were doing it with tablet computers. There was a girl named Phoebe and her sister in London, England, and they felt fed up with vegan activism, and they decided to do their own thing. These two young women, I think they were about 18 years old at the time. I don't know their exact, but they were pretty young women, and they decided to put on this plain white mask, not a Guy Fawkes mask, a plain white mask, and to sit with their laptop computer on their lap, riding the subway in London, England. If you've never been to London, England, it's quite a crowded subway. There's not a lot of space. You know, they nickname it the Tube. You feel like you're stuffed into a tube. So people are really crowded together. And I honestly don't know if they just did this when they were going from home to school, like if they were taking a trip anyway on the subway, or if they right from the beginning just rode the subway as far as they could on one ticket, got all the money's worth out of there. I don't know what their plan was initially, but they discovered that this was a really interesting and engaging form of activism, where they were playing these vegan documentaries, I believe with the sound off on their screen, and holding up a sign explaining what they were doing. And I remember so again, that was new at that time. And I remember the very first time I saw anyone imitating them. So that was brand new. At that time, I don't believe they were even on YouTube, and I wasn't either. They put that on their blog. I knew them, you know, as much as you know someone over the internet. I knew their blog. They knew my blog. I was just talking to Phoebe a couple days ago. You know, it was nice to hear from her. She's moved on. She's doing other things, but of course, she's still invested in vegan activism. I remember I saw a video of, I think, an even younger girl in Toronto, and she and her friends tried to imitate this on the Toronto subway. And the very first time they did it, a guy just freaked out and started screaming at them, and they had this really negative, hostile reaction. So I remember the first faltering steps in that experiment of showing slaughterhouse footage, taking the experience on YouTube out of the living room or out of the office, out of the privacy of your own home with the computer, and wanting to take it out into the real world and share it with people. And at one point, that was something authentically new and edgy and thrilling and strange that people tried to do, right? And as I say, fads don't come and go in real life as rapidly as they do on the internet. But you have to recognize, after this has happened 1,000 times, 10,000 times, after it's become something you walk past on your way to work every day, if you live in Sydney, Australia, and these protesters with the video screens and the masks showing slaughterhouse footage, if that's something you have to see every day when you walk between your office and your parking spot, when you walk between your office and where you go to eat your lunch, this becomes part of the drumbeat of daily life, right? At least you have to say the thrill is gone. But what's not gone right now, the moment we're in 2018, I think one thing that powerfully motivates people is wanting to reach out to strangers and share the same thrill and horror, the same conversion experience they themselves felt the first time they watched slaughterhouse footage on YouTube. Whether that was from Farm to Fridge or the Earthlings experience, whatever it was. I mean, for different people, it's different. I'll just mention really briefly, one of the only YouTubers I've known in real life face-to-face, I've met a few in real life, she converted to veganism because one day she opened a box of chicken. They bought a box of what should be, separated chicken breasts, little pieces of meat neatly wrapped up for you. And there were feathers. There were feathers inside the box, by accident, obviously, at the packing plant or the slaughterhouse or whatever. They accidentally left some feathers in. And she felt so horrified and so disgusted that she dropped the box. She probably cried, but she stopped eating meat immediately. And then what did she do? She didn't go to her priest. She didn't go to a Buddhist monk. She didn't go to a library. She went to the internet and started searching for this information. She searched and she found YouTube videos. She found slaughterhouse videos. She found out about where chicken really comes from. And I think she became vegetarian that day, and she ended up becoming vegan about 6 days later. because of this process of information, right? Like at first she didn't figure out all the stuff about dairy and eggs, but like within a week or 2 weeks, she was totally committed to veganism. And she was struggling with this huge emotional impact this had on her. It changed the whole way she viewed the world. She immediately started trying to convert her boyfriend to veganism, her mom, her grandmother, her sister. There was this constellation of people in her life where she then took this experience, part of which is horror, right? And was really trying to impress that upon other people, in her orbit, right? And today in 2018, it's gotten old. It's gotten old for the general public. It's gotten old for the viewing public here on YouTube, which is a much smaller group of people. But it's gotten old for us as vegans more than anyone else, because we have to hear this and deal with this all the time, day in, day out. But there is a nostalgia that partly drives the street activism, that partly drives people to donate money to Earthling Ed. There is a nostalgia for wanting to relive the drama and dynamism of that period, whether for you that was in 2008 or 2012, or maybe it was in 1992, whenever it happened for you, that you made this connection. And whether it's going out in the street or in some other theatrical format, trying to take that YouTube experience, the slaughterhouse footage, the moment of realization, and then all the questioning and the facts, and suddenly looking at cultural traditions in your own culture differently, this grand reevaluation of wanting to go out and share that with other people. And you know what? Sometimes it happens. A friend of mine or a colleague of mine in the movement, I saw she had a photograph and she wrote up her own experience recently doing this type of activism in the street, and she got this gratifying and I think nostalgic experience of seeing this family. I think it was a family of 3 people, maybe 3 or 4 people. And they stood there as a family and saw this slaughterhouse footage, and their jaws just dropped, and they suddenly had all these questions, and they wanted this information, exactly the same stuff people Googled and everything. They went through and she got to stand there with them, and she got to basically say, yeah, it was like this for me too, maybe 10 years ago. I forget how many years ago she became vegan. But, enough years ago, but not very recently. But whether it was 5 years ago or 8 years ago or 10 years ago, she said, yeah, you know what? The first time I saw this, I had the same questions you had. I wanted to know, and I had the same feeling of injustice, and what can I do, and how can we stop this, and how can we change it? And she got to hold their hands, metaphorically speaking, not literally, as they went through this. And she said the whole family, by the end of it, they were more or less committed. Like, look, we gotta try to be vegan or something like vegan. It happens, and I understand the emotional function that serves. Okay. But nevertheless, my fundamental commitment is to the truth. I didn't get involved in veganism for emotional reasons. I'm not going to applaud forms of activism or specific political theories that I know to be wrong because they make people feel good. I'm not out here chasing a feeling. And I think it's important to recognize that as much sympathy for that scenario as I may have, that's all it is. It really is chasing a feeling. And as such, it's important for someone like me to engage in analysis and critique and hold it up to that comparison. We say, okay, compared to PCRM, compared to other forms of activism and engagement, where we could be putting the same amount of time, talent, and money, ultimately about money, finite resources, are we really doing the right thing? And most of you already know my answer is no. It's a hard answer. It's an inconvenient answer. It's an emotionally startling answer for a lot of vegans who are not used to hearing this from their fellow vegans. But you know what my recent videos show? I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one asking those questions. I'm not the only one coming to those conclusions. I'm going to read you an email I just received from a Patreon supporter please click on the link below this video. Support this channel for $1 a month. I'd love to hear from you. Maybe your videos, maybe you'll write to me, and your letters also will inspire a long video like this, a long set of reflections. Okay, so my supporter, who uses the name No Meat, No Dairy, writes as follows, quote, I was previously impartial to Ed. I respect that he has made a huge impact, particularly in England. A couple of friends have said to me that they have learned so much from him. Yet while I think he's pretty good in a debate, he's far from the polished article, and he misses opportunities. That being said, he puts in the work and is dedicated, so my hat is off to him. I've never felt this need to, so I'll just foreshadow. He's responding here to my criticism of Earthling Ed's recent speech, his speech at the rally that allegedly had 10,000 people attending in London, England. He says, I've never before felt the need to speak negatively of him. I have always thought of him as genuine. But then came this speech. I hated it, period. It's not just cult-like because it's cringeworthy, but because it is a lie, period. It is the personification of a cult leader preaching to his followers and lying, telling them that they are on the verge of a new dawn, telling them that the world is going to change and that they are the catalysts, that they are the chosen ones. I heard this just as I returned from a holiday in the southwest of England. I assume he means a beach vacation. There are some beaches there in the southwest of England. At the holiday resort, I didn't meet one vegan. There were no vegan options on any of the menus at any of the restaurants we went to. Many people had no idea what veganism was. Some did, and it was obvious what they thought of it by the expressions on their face when veganism was mentioned. Back home, my daughter is the only vegan in her school. They still serve milk at all of the receptions for the kids as standard, as part of a quote-unquote healthy diet. In my opinion, these rallies, where the vegan celebrities give sermons to their Facebook and Instagram fans, these rallies are doing nothing to bring about a real change in England. Why not spend this time and effort launching a campaign to challenge the school milk scheme? So meaning challenge the fact that schools are giving unhealthy, ecologically irresponsible, and cruel products to children, such as milk. And they're giving disinformation about the health benefits of milk and a lot of other things. They're certainly not telling these kids where milk comes from. They're certainly not showing kids slaughterhouse footage or footage of how the dairy industry really works or explaining this stuff, right? Why not spend this time and effort launching a campaign to challenge the school milk scheme? All the money that goes into funding the celebrity culture and rallies could be put into hiring a lawyer to take the education authorities to court, to hire nutritional scientists to present the hundreds of studies showing the negative health effects of milk consumption, and, to press some kind of charges, to press some kind of case against the school boards because they are misleading children on how this stuff is produced, on its health benefits. He doesn't mention ecology. Ecology could be thrown in there too, right? There is so much to be done, but instead it's becoming like war propaganda. The leaders are telling the people at home that they're winning, but the reality on the ground is quite different. Moreover, I don't believe the statistic being bounded around that allegedly 7% of England is now vegan. So I haven't examined that statistic. Earlier in this video, I scrutinized the very dubious statistic claiming that even 3% of people in the United States of America are vegan. Indeed, there were a lot of dubious statistics around proclaiming victory. Okay, where are all these vegans? We can barely get a group of 5 together for a local meetup where I live, and it's a big town not far from London. I would be happy to support real initiatives that seek to educate children on the effects of animal agriculture, on health and the environment, and that challenge those in power to justify their support of animal agriculture and poor dietary advice. Okay? I've been challenged on my role in the vegan movement, many, many times. And those challenges all seem to boil down to people asking, how dare you? Okay. And the answer I have to give ultimately is just as simple as saying, I dare.